Marshal, I said, I would not have fought them, but if they pulled my pup's ears. He looked over to my sack. One pup had worked its way almost through the hole. The other's head and two little paws were sticking out. Both of them were whimpering. A smile spread across the big marshal's face. So that's what started the fight, he said. Walking over, he knelt down, started petting the pups. They were fine-looking dogs, he said. Where did you get them? I told him I had ordered them from Kentucky. What did they cost you, he asked. $40, I said. He asked if my father had bought them for me. No, I said, I bought them for myself. He asked me where I got the money. I worked and saved, I said. It takes a long time to save $40. He said, yes, I said, it took me 2 years. 2 years, he exclaimed. I saw an outraged look come over the marshal's face. Reaching up, he pushed his hat back, he glanced down at the street, and I heard him mutter, there's not one in that bunch with that kind of grit. Picking up my sack, he said, picking up his sack, I said, thanks for helping me out. I guess I'd better be heading home. He asked where I lived. I smiled. Up the river a ways. Well, you've got time for a bottle of pop before you go, haven't you? I said, haven't you? I started to say no, but looking at his big friendly smile, I smiled back and said, I guess I have. Walking into the general store, the marshal went over to a large red box. Pulled back the lid. He asked what kind of I wanted. I had never had a bottle of pop. Never had a bottle of pop in my life. I didn't know what to say. Seeing my hesitation, he said, this strawberry looks pretty good. I said that would be fine. The cool pop felt wonderful in my hot, dry throat. My dark little world had brightened up again. I had my pups, and I had found a wonderful friend. I knew that the stories I had heard about marshals weren't true. Never again would I be scared when I saw one. Back on the street, I shook hands with the marshal, saying as I did, if you ever up in my part of the country, come over and see me. You will find our place by asking at my grandfather's store. Store, he asked. Why, the only store is upriver is about 30 miles away. Yes, I said, that's my grandfather's place. He asked if I was afoot. Yes, I said. You won't make it tonight, he said, will you? No, I said. I intend to camp out somewhere. I saw he was bothered. I'll be all right, I said. I'm not scared of the mountains. He looked at me and my pups. Taking off his hat, he scratched his head, chuckling deep down in his barrel-like chest. He said, yes, I guess you will be all right. Well, goodbye and good luck. If you're ever in town again, look me up. From far down the street, I looked back. The marshal was still standing there where I'd left him. He waved his hand, and I waved back. On the outskirts of town, I stopped, picked up a can and my provisions. I hadn't gone before. I realized I had undertaken a tough job. The sack had become heavier and heavier. For a while, my pups cried and whimpered. They had long since pulled their heads back into the sack, and I would peek at them every once in a while. They were doing all right, curled up onto the two little round balls on my bundles. They were fast asleep. Deep in the heart of the Sparrowhawk Mountains, night overtook me. There in a cave with a stream close by, I pulled up for the night. Taking my pups and bundles from the gunny sack, I used it to gather leaves to make my bed. My pups followed me on every trip, whimpering and crying and tumbling and falling over sticks and rocks. After the bed was made, I built a fire. In a can of water, from the mountain stream. I boiled 3 eggs. Next, I boiled half of the remaining salt pork, cutting the meat up in small pieces. I fed it to my pups. Each of us had a piece of a candy for dessert. The pups enjoyed the candy. With their needle-sharp teeth, they gnawed and worried with it until it melted away. While they were busy playing, I dragged up several large timbers and built a fire, which would last for hours. In a short time, the cave grew warm and comfortable from the heat. The leaves were soft and felt good to my tired body and sore feet. As they lay stretched out, my pups crawled all over me. I played with them, and they would waddle up in front of the cave, look at the fire, and come scampering back to roll and play in the soft leaves. I noticed the boy dog was much larger than the girl. He was deeper in red in color, his chest was broad and solid, his puppy muscles knotted and rippled under the velvety skin. He was different in every way. He would go closer to the fire. I saw right away he was bold and aggressive. Once he went around the fire and ventured out into the darkness. I waited to see if he would come back. He came wobbling into the mouth of the cave, but hesitated there. He made several attempts to come back, but the flames were leaping higher by the minute. The space between the fire and the wall of the cave was much hotter than when he had ventured out. Whimpering and crying, he kept trying to get around the fire. I said not a word, just watched. Puppy though he was, he did something which brought a smile to my face. Getting as close as he could to the side of the cave, he turned his rear to the fire, hopping sideways, yipping at every jump. He made it through the heat and sailed into the pile of leaves. He had enough. Curling up in a ball close to me, he went to sleep. Girl pup was small and timid. Her legs and body were short. Her head was small and delicate. She must have been the run of the litter. I didn't have to look twice to see that she lacked in power. She made up for in brains. She was a much smarter dog than the boy dog. More sure of herself, more cautious. I knew that when the trail would become tough, she would be the one to unravel it. I knew I had a wonderful combination in my dogs. I had not only the power, but the brains along with it. I was a tired boy. My legs were stiff, my feet were sore and throbbing. My shoulders were red and raw from the weight of the sacks. I covered my pups up in the leaves and moved my body as close to them as I could. I knew as night wore on and the fire died down, the chill would come. Tired but happy, I fell asleep. Along in the silent hours of the night, I was awakened. I opened my eyes, but I didn't move. I lay there and listened, trying to figure out what it was that had aroused me. At the first thought of one of my pups had awakened me by moving and whimpering, I discarded that thought, for I could see that they were both fast asleep. I decided it was my imagination working. My fire had burned down, leaving only a glowing red body of coals. The cave was dark and silent. Chill from the night had crept in. I was on the point of getting up to rebuild my fire when I heard what had awakened me. My first thought was that it was a woman screaming. I listened. My heart began to pound. I could feel the strain all over my body as my nerves grew tighter and tighter. It came again, closer this time. The high pitch of the scream shattered the silence of the quiet night. The sound seemed to be all around us. It seemed to be into the way into the cave and rang like a blacksmith's anvil against the rock walls. The blood froze in my veins. I was terrified. Although I had never heard one, I knew what it was. It was the scream of a mountain lion. The big cat screamed again. Leaves boiled and stirred from where my pups were. In a reflection of the glowing coals, I could see one of them was sitting up. It was the boy dog. A leaf had become entangled in the fuzzy hair of a floppy ear. The ear flicked and the leaf dropped. Again, the hellish scream rang out, and over the mountains, Leaves flew up as my pup left the bed. He jumped up and I tried to call him back. Reaching the mouth of the cave, he stopped, rising his small head high into the air. He bawled his challenge to the devil cat. The bawl must have scared him as much as it had startled me. He came tearing back. Tiny hairs on the back of his neck were standing on end. My father told me lions were scared of fire, and I started throwing on more wood. I was glad I had dragged up a good supply while making camp. Hearing the noise from the bed, I looked back. The girl pup, hearing the commotion, had gotten up and joined the boy dog. They were sitting side by side with their bodies stiff and rigid. Their beady little eyes bore into the darkness beyond the cave. The moist tips of their black noses wiggled and twisted as if they're trying to catch a scent. What I saw in my pups gave me courage. My knees quit shaking, my heart stopped pounding. I figured the lion had sent up my pups. The more I thought about harming them, the madder I got. I was ready to die for my dogs. Every time the big cat screamed, the boy dog would run to the mouth of the cave and fall back at him. I started whooping and throwing rocks down the mountainside, hoping to scare the lion away. Although the long hours of the night, I kept this up. The lion prowled around us, screaming and growling, first on the right, then on the left, and above and below. In the wee hours of the morning, he gave up and left to stalk the other parts of the mountains. I'm sure he thought he didn't stand a chance against two vicious hounds in the big hunt.